Oh, somebody.
There we go.
Oh, other way around. There we go.
Should we kick off?
Let's do it.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the panel discussion, What to Know Before You ICO, whatever you want to call it. I'm Ellie. I'm from the Futurist Collective. We have here a great panel of people. I'm going to be a moderator today, so I'm going to be interrupting people if they talk too much and all that sort of fun stuff. But first, let me introduce the panel guests. First and foremost, we have Kim and Jason. Kim, do you want to do a bit of a hello?
Hello.
Jason?
Yeah. Hi. Want me to do an introduction, or?
Yes, please.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right. So engineer background, have been involved with blockchain technology for almost since the beginning, very early days, done a lot of experiments with it. Now setting up a new company here, focused on creating more clarity and integrity around the blockchain technology and empower entrepreneurship. So we love initiatives like this, and we're going to support as much as we can.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Jason, you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I'm working with Kim, so mostly what he said. I have more of a financial background. And so, yeah, I've been in the space a little bit less time. I cut my teeth about the middle of last year, so I'm like been in the space for a long time in blockchain terms. But yeah, loving the space, loving building this amazing company, and really looking forward to the discussion today.
Excellent. And then we have Damien King. Damien, do you want to do introductions?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yes, my name's Damien. A little bit about my background. I'm an engineer like Kim. I'm probably not as good. I've sort of been involved in startups for a long time. I lived 10 years in London working for some of the largest companies like the BBC and a lot of time at Virgin Media. And I founded 2 startups in the UK. And then recently returned to Australia, where I've sort of started a startup, and then also a startup studio where I have like a nearshore outsourcing team in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh, and also engineers in Australia. So I'm super interested about ICOs, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having at least one ICO, if not more, this year.
Awesome.
Okay, Lisa, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure.
As the final panel member?
Sure. So Ellie and I run the Futurist Collective together. My background's as an accountant, and the Futurist Collective runs education events on future skills, as well as has an investment syndicate, so as that investors can access opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise on their own. So yeah, I'm less experienced by a long way than the other 3 panelists in this area, but I feel it's my duty to ask all the stupid questions on behalf of everyone else, and and make it easier to understand and more accessible to more people.
And in addition, I think, yeah, what you bring to the table as well as the investor view, the investor lens towards ICOs, because it's not just about a technical solution that requires funding. It's also around connecting people around a particular solution, a particular opportunity. Great, thanks for that. Why blockchain? Want to chat to you about, do you want to kick off, Jason and Kim, about what blockchain use cases you can see and why we're going to talk about blockchain and why it's so exciting? Just very brief.
Yeah, I mean, I can talk, I guess, for hours about blockchain. So I'll definitely not do that. But in the context of we're looking at ICOs and all of that, I think, yes, it's a way to raise money, and we'll get into trying to look for utility. But blockchain is definitely, from my perspective and experience, one of the kind of most disruptive technologies, as it gives a lot of freedom. We're not going to go into all the blockchain mechanics and all of that, but when you add a community together with something that is very liquid and very free for people to use, and you can build in incentives, and we'll give some examples of that, it becomes very, very interesting. So when you look at the news out there, blockchain will solve everything. This has definitely not been proven yet, but there's certainly something that is fundamentally very interesting around blockchain, and that's around what they call the new internet of trust. So we actually have something now that is kind of planetary trust built that we didn't have before, and it allows people to do things directly together without all the middlemen, which normally would be governments or bigger corporations, etc. And my vision for the future is that we're going to see a lot of communities, collectives, smaller groups of people being able to have shared ideas and do things together directly, and using a trust internet.
Fantastic, thanks for that. Now, why then ICOs, or terminology? What is an ICO? Can you talk through that a little bit, and all the different terms and phrases that come past?
Yeah, so I'll start with that, and then Jason maybe can go through the process, etc. So the term ICO is just a labeling of using blockchain technology to crowdfund a project or an idea or something, and it's been there for quite a few years, but it's pretty much exploded in 2017 as more awareness was understood and as more people were getting in and starting to use it as a tool to raise money. Since it's a very, very liquid market, the blockchain market, and there's the regulations around it still to be figured out. Every different country in the world is trying to figure out how should they regulate it. They don't want to, and they can't really stop it. They can stop it for a little region, but since we have a decentralized technology, you can't really shut it down. So everybody's trying to figure out how to regulate it, and regulations should protect people. So how does that look like in something that is decentralized, that is everywhere and that people want? Now, normally when we look at blockchain technology, we try to, from Enhanced Society, to look at what has been validated and what is more in the hype space. There's certainly, when we look at the news and that graph you showed before, where all these opportunities for smart contracts, the amazing things is that there's a lot of experiments happening, and it moves very fast, and we're going to see a lot of results from that. But we like to look at really what works and what doesn't. And in regards to the blockchain space, we know that people can, if you have an internet connection, you can create a Bitcoin wallet no matter where you are on the planet. That was kind of like the first thing that allowed everybody to participate. Then the next step would be able to get some Bitcoin, and there's various ways to do that. Now the second kind of, and then Bitcoin became kind of like a speculative tool, because there's built-in scarcity, and people are kind of getting some and holding, expecting it to become worth more. And that drives a lot of the market price, but underneath you have something that is the most trustworthy on the planet, and it has redefined what immutability means. It is the most immutable thing on the planet. Now, so you can say kind of the first use case we have was some sort of digital gold, speculative. There's a lot more in it, but that's how people see it and use it. The second kind of big thing that got validated with blockchain technology, in our opinion, is the ability to raise money. So it started many years ago, or several years ago. Blockchain time is not that long. It's existed for 9 years. So 5 years is a long time. And through 2017, up to $7 billion was raised with this tool. So it basically exploded, and it moved so fast that a lot of people were seeing, okay, easy money, because it's so liquid, and there's a lot of interest in it. And there was also the reason why it moved so fast was that a lot of people have made some money when Bitcoin went up or Ethereum went up, as more awareness is happening. And so they were quite interested in supporting new technologies that come out. And so basically we've seen, I'm sure you all are aware of Kickstarter and Indiegogo, which is kind of donation platforms to support a project, then you might get a thank you or a t-shirt or the first version of the product. And people, this is very successful. Lots of variations of this have shown up. People want this. They like to support something they want to see in the world. And this is something that we are aligned around, that everybody kind of becomes a little bit an investor in the sense that it doesn't have to be large amounts, but you can support things you want to see in the world. And people certainly want this. The second version of these type of crowdfunding platforms are companies like Seedrs or Crowdcube, where you actually get to have some sort of ownership stock, but it's accessible to everyone in the sense that you can invest only a small amount of money. You don't have to be an accredited investor. And this is what we want to see if we are to try and create a world with better distribution of wealth, that it should be inclusive. And blockchain technology is an inclusive technology. So that was the second version, but it's not blockchain. It's not built on blockchain, Seedrs and Crowdcube and these type of solutions. But again, very popular, and people want this. And you can kind of say that ICOs is the third version of this that is kind of inclusive to anyone. So in very short, you create a web page, you put a Bitcoin or Ether address, and you invite anyone to send some Bitcoin or Ether to that address, and then you will get some sort of token that is created, which is a bit like similar to equity without all the legal framework around it. So you just get to own these type of tokens, and then later they will be converted into some sort of utility. And we can give some examples about that, because that is the complicated thing that everybody's experimenting with, and there's no real there's no clear answers yet, but there's certainly lots of opportunities in the space. The way, if I was to put my opinion into ICOs, I definitely feel that a lot of money has been raised for a lot of things that don't have substance, but it is a new tool, and it's moving very fast because it's liquid, and it's self-regulating, and it's maturing by itself. So what you see is some companies that raise $200 million in a few hours, a couple of days, in digital money, and then later they put out their new token, and they're worth $500 million. And these numbers are, of course, they're inflated compared to the value that is behind. But this is very early days, and we certainly think there's a problem with that, because we want to see more value behind the money. So we want to go in and really create more quality in this space. Maybe Jason can talk about the exact steps to go through an ICO, so it becomes a little bit more clear, and then we can go and talk a bit about the token and the utility and those type of things.
Yeah, that would be really good. I think that the evolution of where we got to, the story that you told about how people are now actually democratizing wealth, democratizing the way we can actually support businesses and actually grow our own wealth, and how ICOs are one of that. The question then is, I think the question was asked as well in the chat right now. I might want to jump into that straight away. But what is the difference between equity, in terms of equity ownership of a business, like owning the shares, and owning a token of a business?
Yes, I mean, with equity, you have a standard, more old-fashioned legal framework that gives you rights. It's a paper contract signed by lawyers, and it's protected by the laws in the country that you're in. Now, when you buy some tokens that kind of is somewhat similar to equity, you don't have any of these rights, but you have a percentage of the project that you can see. If there's 1,000 tokens and you have 100 of them, you have a certain percentage ownership of that, and that ownership can then mean different things depending on how you program it. So that's, I guess, the only similarities that are. This is with the digital thing, and since it's programmable, we can do a lot of things in a much more experimental, faster way than we can when we have something that is an equity that is written by law, and you have to change the law, and that's a very slow process, as you can imagine.
I think that let's look through the what to know before your ICO. What's the process that you have to run through, and what are the success factors really for the ICO? You talked a little bit about the hype, and then the fact that millions of dollars are being raised across the globe from anonymous sources, and then that not necessarily translate into value add to or an impact or even a product or a solution. Let's talk about the process. Like you said, Jason, if you want to chat through that, and it's like, how do you actually start an ICO? What do you need to think about, and how do you need to prepare for the whole process? That'd be really good.
Yeah, sweet. So just quickly first on the ownership side of things, there have been ICOs that have ownership and equity-like attributes to them. It's a risky space, and most of the SEC and ASIC have issued guidelines on what is and what is not security in this space. While there is no clear regulation, most of these tokens are coming out trying to avoid that as much as possible. So in most circumstances, you own a token. That token has some utility, ideally, and also has some speculative value. But in general terms, you won't get access to any equity. There are also tokens that come out that are a pre-acquisition of future goods and services, so similar to a Kickstarter. So you might want to run an ICO that is, in the future, my ecosystem will want to buy X, Y, Z from me. So I can run an ICO now at a 10, 20, 30% discount, and my community can participate in the ICO on the proviso that in the future they'll, be able to receive those goods and services at a discount to what they would otherwise get. So I guess there's a spectrum. On the one end, you've got equity-backed ICOs, which most people are staying away from, but you can do, I believe, in certain circumstances, and abide by the securities law in your country. Right at the other end, you've got like the Kickstarter stuff. So I guess there's a whole wide range there to think about, which is great because it gives you lots of opportunity depending on the circumstance that you're trying to tackle. So then on the process, if you could please, are you sharing that page, please, with the process? It's probably going to help people to, yep, great.
This one, yep.
Yeah, so this is, a draft or some information around the process that we run. We've developed this process in conjunction with our global ICO team. This process is being used by quality ICO providers globally, but it is by no means the ICO process, right? There's so many ways you can do this. Everybody's trying to work it out. It is new, but I must also stress that this has been pretty well thought out by some good people over who are pretty experienced. So this is how we run it. So phase one is the token sale funding phase. So it's really a focus on planning and testing. So similar to a normal project, here we're looking for all the key components and the funding to take on the ICO. So we're looking to see, does blockchain work for the problem that we're trying to solve? So what are we trying to solve and who for? And does blockchain work for that? And we're going to go into a bit more about where blockchain seems to be more applicable or not a bit later. But this is the bit where you need to do your feasibility study, look for your deal breakers, look for your levels of support, start to build that early team, and then you need to find someone to fund your ICO. So the question has popped, do you need blockchain for an ICO? So the answer to that one is definitely yes. If you try and run an ICO without a blockchain back end, then people are going to be pretty disinterested, is our understanding. But so going back to the phase one, so you're doing your DD, you're building your team, you're looking at your structuring, and you're looking to work out how you're going to issue the tokens. Because at this phase, there are no tokens. There's a good idea, there's some initial work. You're looking for, there's a couple of different documents that you might like to use, like a token sale agreement, which is more like a traditional contract where you're selling tokens with a paper contract. And in the future when the token is created digitally, then those tokens are then issued digitally. You can also use like a safety legal agreement. There's a bit more of an equity-like agreement, and it's a tokenized version of the SAFE agreement that people might be familiar with from the Y Combinator guys. It was one of the more prevalent, very early stage funding agreements from startup land. So there's a couple of sort of ways that you can look to sign up your first supporters. So you need to get some supporters at this point. Normally there's some funding that's required. You know, our understanding, I hate to put numbers on things. I'm an accountant after all, and you may like to know what it costs to run an ICO. So an ICO will probably set you back somewhere between 200 and 500,000. Obviously don't quote me on that. But that's the sort of ballpark that you're looking to need to try and generate to get ahead. There are a lot of variables in that. It's a multidisciplinary process that takes between 4 and 6 months. So you can imagine, you know, to execute that with the level of professionalism and care and security that you need. You know, if there's 100 things to do in an ICO, you need to get 98 of them right, and so you need to really prepare for that and budget for that. So if you can get through that and you've got to a position where, you know, you've got the team established and the funding, then we roll into phase 2. So phase 2 is really the bulk of the hard work and the heavy lifting. So we need to design the token and the token economics and write a white paper. So they're like 20, 30 pages of you know, pretty hard hitting information about your industry, your background, your team, how you're going to solve this, how a token's going to work in your business. And then you need to develop an effective marketing campaign. So that's not your traditional marketing. There is some traditional marketing in there, but there's a lot of new world crypto marketing to be done. Specifically, you need to have open source code. You need to have the support of the, you know, the crypto coders, developers, you know, supporters globally. And there's a specific way to go and access those people and communities to get their support, which is critical to your ongoing success. Then you need an entity. You need to work out which country you're going to run it from. And there's a wide range of outcomes around that. That sort of lends itself quickly into the legal. So the legal's a big part of where you run the ICO. And then you need to first of all decide if you want to be on an exchange or not. Not all tokens need to be on an exchange. Not all problems that are being solved require a you know, speculative token asset. So first of all, work out if you want to be on an exchange or not. Then you need to get access to the right exchanges and get agreement and get those listings done as you go through the ICO. Then you have to run the TSC itself. So running the TSC is another word for ICO. We haven't covered that. So token sale event is an ICO, more or less. I won't get into the jargon, or perhaps we should. So coin typically is like an underlying cryptocurrency. It's like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Waves. You know, they're true coins, cryptocurrencies. A token is written on top of a cryptocurrency. So it is a pretty big distinction that everybody should be aware of, especially if you're doing an ICO. So we use the term token sale event because we create our tokens as tokens on top of Ethereum using the ERC20 methodology. So that's why it says TSC everywhere.
And I'll just jump in quickly, Jason, because I know there's a lot of people that I've spoken to in the last week who are put off by the jargon or who are struggling, and particularly some of lots of different people that I've spoken to have said, well, you know, is it coin, is it token, is it this, is it that? And I think that it is great that you've explained it so simply, because there's lots of people who I've spoken to have said, oh, you know, by the time I get my head around it, I've got a headache.
I hope it was effective. And you know, if you want to have a little bit of a think about it as well, go to Coin Market Cap, and there's a filter. You can look at the coins, then you can look at the tokens.
Yep.
When you're looking at the tokens, you can see the underlying cryptocurrency that the tokens are written on top of. And that'll just, again, help to develop your understanding of the different levels. And then on top of tokens, there's simpler levels to do blockchain as well, as you know, but we can worry about that later. So, all right, so now we've got our entity, we've worked out which country we're going to run it in, we've worked out if we're going to get it on exchange or not, and then which exchange you're going to go, you know, get all that done. So then you've got to set up a special token to run the ICO, and then it rolls into the ongoing token later. And then you obviously need a nice website that explains everything. The website's very much just the white paper on the website. And then a pitch deck. So you always need a pitch deck when you're working through one of these projects. So that's sort of phase 2 as we know it. Any questions now before I head on?
I would roll through if you can.
So phase 3 is where the big public part happens. I'll just take a step back. So in phase 2, at the back end of phase 2, you're looking to do some fundraising. So you're doing your the pre-raise. You need to work out a percentage of the ICO, and you need to try and get that done in phase 2. So there you're looking for the partners. You're looking for some big players, some big supporters, people from your industry, some people that really believe what you're doing, you know, at a very high level. You're trying to unlock some community here. So, I mean, we probably haven't talked about it enough yet, but like 80% of this game is community. So, you know, you need to be thinking about that a lot. You need to be thinking, who is my community? How big are they? How much do they like what I'm doing? Am I solving a big, valuable problem for them? And then you need to find people in phase 2 that believe you, that are supportive of you, and that will help come on the rest of the journey with you. Once you get through that phase, then, you know, everything goes public and big and very all over the
very
internet.
Visible.
Very visible. So you're talking big advertising, social media, Reddit, and then, you know, there's like a 4-week window normally, give or take, where your token sale event page is up. And so there's a place where people can actually send you Bitcoin and Ether and contribute. Now, in the best cases, you know, that happens very quickly and you reach your hard cap in a very short space of time. In most cases, you know, people don't reach their minimum requirement and everything in between, which is, again, reasonably normal for this type of activity in the old world. So there's some similarities in this world. So what we're doing here is, you know, for us as we're doing it, so we're managing the community, advertising, marketing, making sure the security is very high. So this is a risky time for hacking and scamming and those sorts of things. And you hear about these, you know, regularly. Every month there's a range of these attacks. So you need to be very careful there. The special bounty program. So part of the bounty programs is getting people to actually try and find problems with the token and with your activity so that you can be closing those down. There's a range of other bounties around sales and marketing. And so you're looking to, again, activate the community to help you have a successful token sale event. And then we roll into phase 4. So we've now successfully reached a certain amount of capital raised. If it's under the minimum, then all the money goes back wherever it came from. If we've reached our minimum, then we go into, I guess, the more normal distribution process. So all the Ether goes somewhere and the new tokens are issued. There's normally a time between the close of the token sale event and when it lists on an exchange. So there's a period there where you're developing the utility token. So you're developing the token that you said you would develop, and then you're getting that live onto exchanges as soon as possible. So that's sort of the 4 phases. So we've got to do the planning and testing and funding in the beginning. Then we go into the real meat of the exercise of really building out what this thing is going to be and making it into something that's really powerful for your community. Really building up the community in a big way and getting a lot of supporters on board. And then you've got your live window of 4 weeks where it's very public. And then you've got your execution, distribution phase afterwards.
And at what stage do you see the need to actually have your solution working up and running? Have you seen it that it works pre-TSC, or do you see it post-TSC that your solution, like the actual blockchain solution, is up and running?
I've seen the vast majority have very little actually running during this process. So most of them are running with, even if they've got prototypes, that's normally pretty well progressed for this stage. Some of them may have been, be a little bit more progressed, say MVP stage or what have you. But with the whole industry being so new and the technology being so new and the teams being so new, normally the utility token, so the real token, starts from after this phase. So it happens sort of phase 5 onwards, and can take anywhere from, can take years to do it properly. If you look at some of the projects that have been taken on globally, they're very big projects taking on very, very large scale complicated issues, and they'll take years to develop, and many will fail because of the complexity of the projects.
Which is an interesting one, right? Because as an investor, Lisa, how would you feel about that? Like, where do you sit from a traditional standpoint versus a non-traditional, like the ICO world, where everything moves really quickly? How do you feel about the solution actually not being ready yet? Lisa?
You're on mute.
I'm now unmuted. I didn't want to pick up any background noise. I think there is an interesting shift in investment in terms of what and why people are investing in certain things. So I think that there, as Jason alluded to, I think that this element of community is around probably something that is bigger than just the pure metrics of the investments. So what's the pure return on investment, or what's my the bit like funds and stuff. What's the percentage? People are actually looking now at different criteria, at a larger criteria, about a criteria that addresses things like what sort of world do I want to live in? What sort of problems do I want to be a part of solving? What's the long-term legacy that some of these projects leave? So look, I think that it's a long debate that we could have in this space. I think there will be ultimately people want to see that it's got the odds stacked towards it, for sure, in terms of teams and things like that. But there's a lot, not only in this space, but more broadly in the investment space, where people are tackling big problems, and that that it's not always guaranteed to work.
To add to that, I actually feel that the ICO space is much more liquid than a normal investment. If you invest in a startup, you have to wait 5 to 7 years, where it's either going to do an IPO and you might be able to sell your shares, or it's going to fail. While in the blockchain space, not only is it, you are sometimes seeing solutions happen faster than the old-fashioned way, but you can also, your tokens that you end up with after the ICO has run, typically can be exchanged on exchanges. And so you can sell half your shares, and maybe there's more hype around the project, or the team has proven themselves, so the value goes up, and you can recover some of your investment. So you help kickstart the idea, but you still have a stake in the project. And actually, this, when I discovered the coin market cap, which is the list of all these cryptocurrencies some years back, I understood first, when you get a little bit of Bitcoin, I can buy some of all the other coins, and it's very, very easy to. Well, it's easy if you're a technologist. Certainly, the user experience is not there for less engineering people. It's getting there slowly, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But it's comparing to normal equity. I could very easily, with small amounts, buy different things that I would like to see, and that was quite amazing. At the beginning, I was asking myself, "Well, we have Bitcoin. Why do we need all these other things?" And then I understood that people were forking Bitcoin in all sorts of directions, since it was open source, and experimenting with creating version 2.0 or 3.0, and inventing these concepts of smart contracts and more programmable solutions on top of blockchain. And then I was understanding, well, a little bit of Bitcoin, then I can support these teams and be part of this. And that felt really, really good. Now, of course, and we should talk about that as well. Now, the process, and we're talking about the ICO token and smart contracts for most people, this is gibberish, and it will continue to be. And what we are lacking in this space is clearly user experiences that are very, very simple. So people can have these one-click solutions, and they're using fiat money language to invest, and so all these structures to be.
I think it would help if you guys could talk about the case studies that are on this page here, because that would make it real, right? If you can talk about their journey and then how that actually rolled out and where they are at right now, I think it'd be useful to make it real and to say, okay, this is actually possible, and this is the time frame, and this is what they came up against, and this is where they're at now.
Yeah, I can talk a little about status and the basic attention token. There's many out there, and as an engineer and being in this space, I'm probably attracted to engineering solutions sometimes too much, but there's also other values that I have and I want to see in the world. These cases are interesting. The basic attention token raised $35 million in 24 seconds. The status raised $100 million in less than 3 hours. So that was part of the 2017 mania that we don't know if it's going to continue in the same way. But it was also because already at that time, there was a lot of ICOs that had come out, or projects where there was little substance. And in the case of the basic attention token, that's the team behind that is the guys who built the Brave browser, who's part of the Mozilla Foundation. So he has, main guy has a proper history in open source projects and working products. And also he made a small cap for those times, 35 million, which created a lot of, wow, here's a real product that a lot of people were using. If people are not aware, the Brave browser has built-in ad blocking tools, and a lot of people are annoyed with being spammed all the time with ads. So instead of having a plugin, this is built into the browser by a well credited person. And the problem is also, or the problem that the basic attention token is trying to solve using a utility token, is to get around this. Well, if we block all ads, then the companies that are providing valuable information but are living off the ads won't have a chance. But the ads are a bit like spamming as much as possible, so it's hard to get to quality ads. And the utility token of the basic attention token is basically use the token to decide which type of ads you want. And the cool thing about that is that already now in the Brave browser, if you download that, the feature is there. So you have an ICO that was run that raised a certain amount of money, and then the utility token was created, and it's now testable inside the browser. So I recommend you download the Brave browser, and I think relatively easy you can find where it is, experiment with it, and you have a real token, and you can learn for yourself if it works or not. In the status example, they were very successful because they already had quite a story of creating a community and a community of people working on top of the solution or their project and discussing it and being very, very, very engaged. And we're seeing just a little bit of history of the blockchain. It's kind of born from the geekiness, a lot of engineers that are building all these tools. And then we saw through 2017, all the investors, kind of like the second wave of people coming in, all the investors came in and started throwing money at the different ICOs as they could see some, in the short term, easy profits, and they were getting excited about this. And now we're seeing the last few months, we're seeing like the third wave, which is the normal person on the street that doesn't understand blockchain and probably should not speak blockchain, but are wanting to have some Bitcoin, a bit driven by fear of missing out and greed, but it certainly creates an awareness and a feel for being part of that, which is very important. So Status has created a huge community before they launched the ICO, so it was very successful. What they're trying to do is, again, back to that these technologies that are getting better and better and easier every day are still very geeky. And one of the technologies that we like very much is called Ethereum. It's basically a blockchain where you can program all sorts of solutions on top. And this Ethereum blockchain is being experimented with in most larger corporations on the planet, and there's cloud services and a lot of education in the field, etc. So, but Ethereum is, if for a normal person, very, very, very geeky. You need to be a serious engineer to start using it. So now we have seen several projects built on top of Ethereum, so to make it more accessible to the normal person. And there's two projects that we particularly looked at. There's another one called Toshi, and there's this Status. And basically what you get is kind of like a simple browser chat experience that most people are familiar with, an interface that they're familiar with. You create an account in the normal way that you create an account, but actually the account you have is a Ethereum blockchain wallet account underneath. But you don't have to work with those geeky terms like private keys and those things. You're just using like a new form of browser, a browser that gives you access to what they call dApps, or these smart contract applications on top of Ethereum. So it's a higher level. It's easier for most people to use this. It's using the concept of building services into a chat. And this is something that has been quite validated in China with WeChat, where you have all sorts of financial services available through a chat message. And we can see, especially the younger generation is using chat for everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're reusing this channel that people are used to use, but that means, for example, if you build an app in Status, you don't have to build a rich user experience. It's basically a couple of buttons in the chat, or it's commands that people use. For me, that means that you can build a prototype or a little experiment very, very fast without having to program geeky Ethereum. It's typically something like JavaScript you program in. So it makes it accessible to a lot more easier programming languages and more people. And you can experiment things very fast, but underneath you have blockchain. So these are few examples that are very interesting, but let me repeat the utility token itself, which is this new token that is generated and is being used as a gateway to the services that is offered by the project. This is an experimental thing. So back to the validation, using blockchain to raise money has certainly proven itself that it's possible for that. There's a lot of cleanup that needs to happen, and there'll be corrections in the field, etc. But it's already maturing a lot. But all the solutions on the fringes, which is a lot of the things we read in the news, it's going to solve the supply chain for this, it's going to solve all these things. Those are in the experimental phase. But with the Brave browser, you can download this browser. It's a real product that existed before the ICO, and now you have the utility token built in, so you can immediately play with that.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is that there's a few key success factors there that made these cases really successful. One is having an established community. Jason also recommended that. The other one is having a track record of the founders. Is that a key one as well? Yep. And Damien, did you want to talk about, despite all the hype and also a bit of the negative news, what's exciting you still in this space, and what do you see as opportunities for yourself?
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to sort of talk about, and I think Jeremy's raised the same sort of question, which is, can you do a coin offering, a TSC or an ICO for less than 200 or 200 and 500? I think it's great talking about these fantastic examples like Power Ledger and things like that. But ultimately, when I put my startup hat on and I try and talk about MVPs, and my company, Adaptive Media, we try and get every MVP under $50,000 because we understand founders don't have much money. So I'm really interested to know how ICOs can help those startup founders and how we can get the costs down. One thing that I'm sort of seeing develop here in Australia is the ICO advisor, who are charging quite large sort of figures to do ICOs. And the incubator space was sort of like this, you know, a couple of years ago, where we saw them pop up from everywhere, and they sort of took a lot of startup funding to sort of get those, and then they'd never really delivered as well. So that's sort of like one of the dangers I think that we need to keep an eye out for. And the second one is, how do we make this more accessible for startup founders who perhaps have the great ideas and the passion and everything, but don't have the seed funding? It's like they sort of need the pre-ICO seed funding.
Yeah, and can I add to that, because it's just right down our alley? That's actually the platform we're building in Enhanced Society. We want to see people being able to raise a lot smaller amounts, like 50,000 or whatever you need to kickstart something, and a lot more transparency around what you did with the money. And if you reach a couple of milestones, maybe 3 months down the road, you unlock more money from the investors, and you have that good relationship with the investors, and it becomes accessible to everyone. Now, I think you're totally right. There's a lot of ICO advisors, and it's difficult space, so there's opportunity to pretend to be a blockchain expert and all of that. But right now, we're still lacking all these tools to create mature ICOs and make them cheaper. But we're seeing platforms being built different places in the world that where you raise less money and it becomes much more automatic. And I think that this is only a matter of time. We're going to see a lot easier. It will be a lot easier to raise.
Yeah, I want to add to this as well. So it's expensive at the moment for a reason, because it's very hard and there's very few people doing it, and it takes a really long time, and everything's very manual. I think, you know, most people would, well, I've been in the startup space for a while, and I know Damien has as well. In the beginning, you have to do everything manually, and it's our vision, you know, and enhance society and what we're building. And I'm sure a lot of other people have the same mind. We need to try and make it faster and easier and cheaper and more accessible for everybody. But in the beginning, you got to do, you know, you got to have a big team of people all, you know, working on it. So unfortunately, it's just the way in the short term. And one thing I'll say about advisors as well, like it's an interesting thing, you know, paying someone money who's outside your organization, you know, and then relying on them. So I would just say, look, if you're using an advisor, and I don't consider us to be advisors, because we're like a totally outsourced ICO solution, which is very different. You know, we control and own and deliver the whole thing for you with a whole team of experts. It's a bit different. But when you work with an advisor, just be aware, you know, like they're not inside your company, and there's some management issues around that that I'll probably just be a bit careful of as well.
Thanks for that. I think it's a good bridge to look at the other lens. Like if you're actually a startup and you're actually looking for investors to get on board to even do a token sale event, what are they then looking at? Lisa, did you want to talk through the information you put on this slide?
Well, I can start. I think what I would, you know, what I'll start with, I'm not on mute, so that's good. I suppose, you know, the typical things that investors are looking for when they're looking at startups is they're looking at what the business model looks like for the business, what the team is, what the team structure is, and who's in it, what successes they've had to date. So what traction they've got, what the return is going to look like over how many years. So they're the sorts of things that investors are looking for in traditional investments. I think there are certainly a lot of things that investors are going to look for the same sorts of things when they're looking at these investments as well, in terms of, you know, the team, the community. Can they see it solving a big problem? What some of the traction that's been made already, but Jason is probably a lot better able to draw some of the parallels between the two processes that the investors go through on a traditional startup investment versus a ICO investment.
This is where you start. Like when you're doing phase one, this is where you start. So does my idea, or does this idea I'm analysing, satisfy one of these 5 things? And look, these aren't the only things, but this is what the best minds in the industry at the moment are saying. This is the most probable success areas to be looking. You know, digital signatures, distributed immutable ledger, smart contracts, tokenization, decentralized identity. So we didn't talk about Power Ledger. It's the most successful one in Australia. It's one of the most successful ICOs ever. They got 34 million in a matter of a few days. The current market cap on the coin market cap is, you know, US 303 million. Has been as high as, you know, over 600. So, you know, what they're doing, among other things, is distributed immutable ledger, smart contracts, and tokenization. So they've tokenized renewable energy, and so they've chosen sort of 3 key areas. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if they've got decentralized identity in there as well, but they've got at least 3 of those 5 boxes ticked. And then, you know, when you look at their team, they had 10, 12 people, you know, dedicated to this on their team. They've experts at community building and community management. They had, you know, had all guns blazing on that for months leading up to it. They had incredible backers. So they had like Bill Tai. They got money from Blockchain Capital. You know, they had a billionaire backer. So look, I'm not trying to like scare people away. Like there is a big broad spectrum, and I totally take Damien's point, and I've spent a lot of time in early stage companies, and so, you know, everybody needs to be able to access this. But I guess the lessons are, you know, are we tackling the right type of stuff with this blockchain solution? And is there enough, you know, team and community, you know, is there a fit between the business and the blockchain, you know, for this to have a better chance? Like you were saying before, Lisa, you know, when you're reading, as an investor, you're reading, you know, opportunities, you're always thinking, well, you know, based on my criteria, does this have a better chance than anything else? And one thing I wanted to say about ICOs as well, you know, because I've got a finance background, I'm an accountant too, so it sort of feels like a seed round and a VC round and an IPO all at once in like a 3-4 month period. So that's why it's such an incredibly liquid and powerful opportunity. So you can say, because the blockchain's so new, so you say, well, this is my new blockchain vision, this is my team, this is what I'm going to do. And then 4 months later, if you're successful, you've done an IPO size raise and you're listed on a global exchange potentially. So it is this incredible thing that has never really happened before. It is a fantastic opportunity that people should be looking at, I believe, to see whether it works for them. It's a phenomenal opportunity and tool. There is a lot of speculation, but there is a lot of opportunity. So rolling them through validation questions on the right-hand side. So you've got to be thinking, how does this make it radically better? So the first thing is draw your business process. Look at the process and say, how can I improve this process? If you've got 17 steps and you implement the blockchain and you've got 3 steps, that's a good start. You know, things like that. Just, am I making my process radically better? You know, am I increasing capital? Am I speeding up my ecosystem? Is the customer experience dramatically increased? All that stuff.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to mention that, I think you guys have done a great job at jumping into that space, right? Because you just mentioned that an ICO actually reduces the time period and a lot of friction, talking to a lot of people for startups from 5 years, potentially down to 4 months. And from having to talk to a zillion people to probably maybe 50.
Imagine how many pitches you'd have to do a seed round and a VC round and an IPO. It'd take you 5 years, and lawyers and accountants fees like you would not believe, and you know, 1 in every 10,000 probably makes it. In this situation now, the odds are way more stacked in your favor. Obviously, please use these tools responsibly. We really do not want to see any garbage going out there at all, and we're working very hard to make sure that, you know, we're educating people the best way that we can to have strong industry. But it is a phenomenal opportunity for sure.
Excellent, that's great. Damien, did you want to ask more questions? I want to open up the floor as well to other questions. So if I want to chat questions, you're most welcome. But I want to just give the word to Damien first.
Yeah, no, I just
his
really
startup hat.
Yeah, from the startup perspective, I just want to, I suppose, mirror what the boys have said about the excitement of the technology. So blockchain is here to stay. There's no getting rid of it. It's like peer-to-peer networking. You can't close it down. You can't shut it. That's the beautiful thing about it. And there is so many utilities that I've already seen. Probably had about 6 or 7 in the last month. Startup ideas that do actually have good utilities for use on the blockchain. So it's a bit of a land grab, but I think the most exciting thing right now is the opportunity that everyone has right around the world, particularly the sooner you can get in this, the better it is, I think, for startups.
Excellent. I want to open up the floor to people ask questions to the panel members. If you want to just put in the chat whatever you want to ask. The first question I want to kick off with was a question that you may have asked Cam already. Some people have been in touch with Cam yesterday. He asked some questions, or today, just to check in with you and see if you could join. One of the questions is really around the risk around IPOs from a legislative and legal perspective, right? So as a founder, you might want to protect yourself, or what are you exposing yourself to, given that this doesn't have any regulations around it, and what regulations are coming? Jason, Kim, do you want to comment on that?
I'll start. I think I'm off mute. So, risks for founders. So the first thing, ASIC have released guidelines around how to do an ICO in relation to the current Australian legislation. So I suggest going to read that as best you can. Essentially, in most cases, you probably want to avoid issuing a security, and they've sort of told you how to do that. That's probably one of the biggest risks, because if you issue a security without abiding by the regulations, then you're going to have an issue. Unfortunately, there's no lawyers on the call, and I'm a bit hesitant to give legal advice. Most of the risks are really similar to a startup. You know what I mean? So it's about, can I make a product that the market wants? Can I get the financial support in the market, that I need in the market? Can I build a team? Can I execute? Most of the issues that you've got to deal with are very similar to starting a new venture.
And I think, Jason, that's what I see as fundamental, is that, even though it's a different technology, the fundamentals of business, the fundamentals of building teams and putting systems in place and scaling and, understanding cash flow and all of those things, they still remain, they do remain part of the, part of the plan,
new risks, like, can I access this new crypto world? It is a bit of a new world. So, the old marketing works to an extent, but there's some new marketing. The old funding is still there, but, I think rule 101 for pitching is pitch in the right room, right? So you've got to be able to pitch into the crypto land. So you've got to know where they are. You've got to be able to build a blockchain team. They're very, very scarce. There's probably a 15 to 20 to 1 demand blockchain developer at the moment. Luckily, coding in the software languages, Damien and Kim know this much better than me, but it's not impossible. It's actually not that difficult to learn. It's reasonably similar to many of the common languages. So there is opportunity to find those people, but that's definitely a risk and a challenge that you should be planning for.
I think founders add, it's pretty common sense stuff. Like, founders need to be aware that they're obviously taking other people's money. And, it's their responsibility to use it wisely and execute on what they've already put in their white paper. But I've heard a number of people talk about the ASIC regulations and, requiring a prospectus normally for an IPO has certain disclosure and certain rules and regulations around not misleading the public and things like that. And so, as a founder, you'd want to be taking a conservative approach to what you put in your white paper, being able to back every single line up as you would with a prospectus with a statistical quote. And then,
even if you're not doing a prospectus, Damien, like you can't mislead the public anyway with any sort of sale of products or services under normal sort of consumer protection requirements as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just a matter of founding, not I suppose glazing over the legals, because that's clearly one of the most important things in this for protection, because the ultimately you're the director of the company and you'll be responsible for it.
Yeah, so it's definitely finding lawyers that already have experience with ICOs and understanding the regulatory that is in a particular country. You can run it from different places. There's, I would say, an even bigger risk, and that's security. So sure, we're working on top of blockchain, which is the most secure thing on the planet, but all the third-party things and the tools on top and people's inexperience with working with public-private keys and all of this makes it a very attractive area for hackers and phishers and scammers. It's actually, if you're an engineer like me, it's very simple to create a new token, and it's quite simple to create a little website and just say, here, send your money here and you're going to get these tokens. But if you do it like that, you're most likely going to lose your money, because there's smart people that can hack and will infiltrate your community and fish a lot of people in the wrong directions, etc. We've seen several cases of this. So the security issue is one of the highest issues. And also when you build your smart contracts, you need to make sure you have many eyes on it and different vettings of the code and all of that. So I think we will see in not too long term, we're going to see some of these tools mature, and that makes it possible to raise less money without having a lot of ICO experts running the thing. It becomes more automated. But right here, right now, you need to be smart, get the smartest lawyers to make sure you're not doing a security, and you need to have very good security people to follow every step of the way.
Excellent. We're running out of time. I just wanted to bit of a summary of what I heard. So some of the key aspects I think are on this page already is like the team, the community, the multidisciplinarity that you mentioned before as well, Jason, around how do you actually get this off the ground, right? And the fact that, as Lisa and Damien said, this is not just about a technical solution. This is much more around a multidisciplinary team, like a normal startup, a normal company, like the foundation of it needs to still be there. If you were in the shoes of the people listening in and want to give them one thing to take away, what is it? Just want to do a round past Damien, Lisa, Kim, and Jason, and then wrap up. You want to kick off, Damien?
Yeah, I suppose the important thing right now is if you're thinking about trying to raise funds through an ICO, there clearly needs to be a lot of research around what you're doing from a number of perspectives. There's many people, as I sort of mentioned before, that are willing to sort of, help you build a blockchain. Solidity is the code, and it's not necessarily that complicated. You can get a white paper written off Fiverr. You can get like a Solidity developer, off another community developer sort of site. And I think you need to be cautious of being tempted to sort of just try and run it yourself without sort of those expertise, or even worse, going to an advisor who says that he's an expert in that area, and then ultimately getting, a really bad service because they don't have the experience. And it's really hard to quantify people who have experience as well, because it's such a new technology and a new industry and things like that. So it's probably like the biggest warning and word of advice for other startups thinking about doing it.
If anyone calls themselves an expert in this space, don't trust them, is my advice.
Funny. So Lisa, you want to talk about the last thing that you want to give people before we wrap up?
Look, I think, it's just keep keep learning and keep digging and keep asking and keep talking to, you know, if you're in that investor space and you're looking for more information, more understanding, it is probably like everything. People are very generous in how they'll teach and what information they'll share. And the only last thing I would say is that it has, the one thing that has struck me is how much the crypto community, the same people that Jason talks about getting on board, how much sort of how ideological they are really, and it seems to be you know, moving towards a lot of self-regulation, and that, you know, you'll see as you enter these conversations that people are pretty swift on things that they don't see as having integrity.
My advice is to try it out. I'm not saying you should go and invest a lot of money, but getting a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of Ether, and simply start using the tools is the best way to learn and get a feel for it. And yeah, you lose a couple of dollars, something that doesn't really matter, but play with it, get a feel for it, and then you're going to follow as the user experience becomes more simple and easier.
Thanks for that, Kim. Jason, some final words? Oh, I think you're on mute.
You're muted. I think the topic was how to do an ICO. So if you're thinking about it, and you should be more interested in it now, I would have thought, than before, do this page, this showing, right? So really think about these things in a lot of details. So which one of these big blockchain things works for your, what is the problem? What is the big problem I'm solving? Can I use one of these solutions to solve that problem? Do I have a team? Do I have the community? You know what I mean? We just talked about the business fit. You know, could I make a business out of this? Who would pay for it? You know, who cares about it? How does it improve my current business? Or how does it enable me to take on a new opportunity that I've wanted to do for all these years? And now's perhaps the time to go from, you know, seed to VC to IPO in the next 4 months. And then, you know, on the right-hand side, you know, how does it make it radically better? Is there fewer steps? Are there less intermediaries? Is the customer happy? So really start to answer those things. And if you're getting a lot of progress there, then I would say that you're probably should keep pushing.
Excellent, thanks for that. And in line with that, if you're really serious about this, we do have an ICO accelerator organized. This is a program where you kind of go in the pressure cooker and get ready, and even shorten that time frame of 4 months as much as possible to make sure you have indeed a minimum viable product as soon as possible. Jason and Kim, did you want to talk about this a little bit, or you want to wrap it up? I know we're out of time, so I want to keep it brief.
Yeah, so we're sort of going to try and do phase 1 in 2 days. So at the end of 2 days, we want everyone to sort of leave with most of the early stage work and thinking that they need to have done. We're going to take you through step by step all the key early thinking and some workshops that help you to make some serious progress. And then, you know, just should give everybody a great step forward on their path.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, talking about a time save from 2 months to 2 days.
That, I think.
Sorry, Kim, go.
No, I think it's what we intend to do is give some very practical tools that helps you evaluate ICOs better and understand how you can apply businesses to an ICO solution, and really try and see what is the old-fashioned way of evaluating a business around team and idea and stuff like that, and join it with blockchain solutions, and where can we do things smarter, and how can we experiment in this space. So you should come out of it with some very good tools to evaluate things and a better understanding of the utility of token, which is something I think is very, very exciting.
And naturally a community that you can actually build upon, because that's what you come together, right? You're on the same journey, so you already have starting to build that community Plus, we connect you to some investors for potential investment for the pre-seed. Lisa, I see the questions coming through. Lisa, you want to talk about the cost and location, etc.?
Sure. We are holding the ICO Accelerator in Bali from the 1st to the 4th of March. It's a boutique resort at Vision Villas. We have it all to ourselves, which means we have this amazing location to go through the program and the process. The cost is $4,800 US. There is an early bird cost of $3,500 that's valid to for the next week. For those that spoke to Cam today, he will do a ring around tomorrow and see if you're interested and if this is something that you're ready to move on, and any questions you might have in particular about the program or the venue or getting there. We started on the Thursday afternoon, so it gives you some travel time on the Thursday to get there. And then it is pretty intensive for the time that you're there. But it's really focused on, as Jason said, getting to that pitch point. And at the end, you have an opportunity to pitch to the Futurist Collective, our investment group, as well as the investment group that Jason and Kim have as well. So obviously, there's no guarantees there, but it is part of the process.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I saw questions come through around the recording, whether the materials will be shared. We will be sending out a recording link. It will be up for a limited time being because obviously not 60 odd people are on this call. The slide deck will go out as well with that. So expect an email, expect a call as well from Cam. If you are interested, seriously consider coming. This is probably a unique offering that you won't see very much in the market by some, I wouldn't say trusted advisors, but actually people who put things into action and know what it's like. So I want to thank everyone for coming, joining this call. Thank you, Kim, Damien, Jason, Lisa, for being part of this and sharing your knowledge so freely. And I hope to speak to you all soon.
Thanks
Thank you.
very much.
Thanks, everyone.